iDUBBBZ goes poop in his pants.
You can. I just want to ask him if you've always been shitting your pants.
No.
Because since I've known you, you've always had like IBS. You've always been shitting yourself.
Yeah, well.
iDUBBBZ struggles to read analog clocks.
The other one that really got me was not being able to read time. Not being able to read time on an analog clock.
Oh, that's so confusing.
Which I can't do
I
at all.
know. I'm with you on that. I don't know, man.
I mean, I can, but it panics
you have
me.
to spend time. People looking at an analog clock and immediately knowing what time it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, fucking how?
And perhaps worse yet, iDUBBBZ supposedly learned empathy at the ripe age of 30.
So it's like, of course I have empathy, but I never did. I think only in these past couple of years have I gained the ability empathy, and I'm very ashamed to admit that. It sounds really pathetic to say at the age of 32 I've acquired empathy.
Call me crazy, but I feel like that last 30 seconds or so was a better content cop than the absolute abortion of an hour-long cope sesh Ian dropped on H3H3. The fact that this guy criticized the H3 podcast for being an emotional dumping ground when this is his podcast is wild.
I just need to sometimes dump.
I would get triggered by any form of abandonment, basically, and I would go into 5-year-old brain.
She's described it a little bit like body dysmorphia, where it's like if you're looking yourself in the mirror for a little too long, you can get a little bit really down on yourself. You know, you read one negative comment, you're like, all right, let's find another one.
Yeah.
And you keep going.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot that could be said about Ian's recent content cop. However, I'm sure hundreds of much larger creators are going to cover it to death. For that reason, I'd much rather spend my time shining a light on some iDUBBBZ content I'm sure nobody has seen. And when I say that, I mean it literally. iDUBBBZ podcast gets basically no views. For those not in the know, iDUBBBZ and his mostly Irish and Italian wife, Anisa, host a fairly obscure podcast called She Ruined My Career, where they cover such riveting topics as Anisa's recent tattoos, Anisa's recent mental health diagnoses, and occasionally misremembered factoids about Canadian politics.
When did Canada become a country? Oh, that's a tough one.
I don't know.
And you better not be Googling the answer.
I'm not. I'm doing math. Okay, I know what it is. Well, roughly.
Dane, just give the answer
I'm guessing
first.
I
1870.
was gonna say 1871.
It was 1867.
Oh my god.
So you are off by well, I mean, you were off by more than a year, but...
Now, this is not something I would normally cover. However, on a recent podcast, our dream couple decided they would cover movies, namely the 1988 Nicolas Cage vehicle, Vampire's Kiss, which is perfect because it means that I can capitalize on recent drama while staying squarely in my chosen niche. But before we get into movie talk, I think it's important I give you a taste of this podcast, a little bit of flavor to understand the vibe, which, spoilers, is rough. First off, Ian and Anisa are completely devoid of chemistry. Every episode would feel like they were meeting each other for the first time if it wasn't also an incoherent mess of inside jokes and a shared Twitter feed. If you don't believe me, just check out this first example.
I guess we should talk about, or I want to talk about this before we really get into the buzzing. I got the back of my thigh and my knee tattooed on the same leg, and wearing jeans
Yeah.
while that's happening. Like,
Well, no one's forcing you.
I know, but I want to look my Sunday best.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
And I have a.
So.
You're telling me this is a loving relationship? People with girlfriends, boyfriends, partners, you tell me, does this sound anything like the kind of banter you share with a loved one? If so, I'm sorry. You gotta break it off. I don't even know how you can get intimate with someone after you hit him with an, okay, yeah, guess so.
Is that like
jeans.
Sunday best, like going to church type
Yeah.
meme? Okay.
We're not going to church. Well,
No.
we're going to the Church of Merlin.
Yeah.
It is crazy to me how every time Anisa tries to throw out a joke, Ian just no-sells it. And don't get me wrong, Anisa's attempts at humor are awful. She's about as funny as a cancer ward. But Ian, the comedy man, just does nothing to help her out. He's like the Israeli Iron Dome, shooting down any attempts to bring laughter or levity to the podcast. And again, I gotta point this out. This is a man in his 30s who just dropped a video speaking very confidently about the Israel v. Palestine conflict who has never heard the term Sunday best. I'm afraid I'm a little skeptical of this man's worldly knowledge. Next up, after about 3 minutes of Gene talk, Ian, absent any setup, launches into a completely incomprehensible rant about his fantasy World of Warcraft strip club / brothel.
I like the idea of setting up a strip club. Forget the Magic the Gathering thing.
Okay.
It's just a different model for strip club or even brothel.
Mm-hmm.
Where basically, you know, like in WoW or other games, you have the Dragon Kill Points, DKP. So basically there's like I don't know why I'm relating it to that, because I think this format exists in, I don't know, it's just like a different business model where basically like the longer you work there and the more hours you put in, the more like value you get from the like collective pool of money.
I think that's like seniority mixed with communism.
Yeah, seniority communism rule.
Because like in communism, you own a portion of the
right.
It
it is like the perfect capitalism communism fucking like coming together.
No, I think
because it is like work yourself to the bone to get more money.
Well, yeah. No, because like at the base of at least like Marxism, that's what it is. It's like you own part of the company, so you want to do better.
So you want to do better.
So because you're going to make money from
in this case, you're not going to own part of the company.
Okay. Okay.
It is just almost like a little thing for the employees to kind of fight over.
So like commission work.
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, no.
But it's
like
not commission.
Salesman.
You don't necessarily have to do a good job.
Oh.
You do a good job just for yourself. For the like one-on-one private sessions or something.
I think you might be describing the U.S. government now.
Yeah, I don't know. It needs to be worked on.
Yeah, no. I like it. I just wanted to make jokes.
Oh no.
What is this pilled out bullshit? Did you take all of the Lexapro? And by the way, I'm by no means an economist or a political expert, but I'm pretty sure whatever Anisa was trying to describe is not an accurate description of Marxism.
It's so ironic that The Matrix has almost like primarily male audience.
Yeah, I mean I wonder really
if
leaned into
that must really mean
leaned into
something.
the male gaze.
No, well, I think that must really say something about men.
Yeah,
and how trapped they feel in being able to fully express their. Because The Matrix is about the trans struggle.
Yeah.
Anisa, how would you know? You've just said that you hadn't seen The Matrix like a minute ago.
Interesting. Have you seen that one?
No.
Matrix Reloaded.
I haven't even seen
regular Matrix.
Yeah, remember? I don't know who is the
That was the thing there's a lot of Barbie movie haters out there.
Yeah.
As a side note, I find the idea that The Matrix is primarily about the trans experience to be absolutely ludicrous. I dare you to find a single person who has not heard that talking point who would organically cite that as a primary theme. To me, this very much feels like after a long string of critical and financial failures, the Wachowskis just made some shit up for the sake of grabbing headlines and spiting right-wing internet people who co-opted the terms red pill, blue pill. It's really giving Dumbledore was gay the whole time, I swear vibes. Also, what the fuck is iDUBBBZ talking about here?
Leaned into the male gaze.
What? How? The whole movie is a sausage fest directed by two future trans women. Trinity is covered head to toe, basically the entire movie. I can only assume this means iDUBBBZ thinks the male gaze means explosions and guns, which is definitely not the case. Again, this is the man who felt confident enough to definitively weigh in on one of the most contentious geopolitical issues of the modern era. Next up, Anisa expounds on a definitely original idea she calls the South Park effect.
Like the South Park effect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you could phrase it
I always
that way.
call it the South Park effect.
What specifically? Like
just like you end up like you're trying to use something else to send a message, but the something else ends up being what the main demographic is. Like American Psycho's a good.
No, I get what you're talking about. You're totally right. Was Fight Club that way as well?
Fight Club was that way. Wolf of Wall Street was that way.
So funny.
The South Park effect.
First off, I have no clue how this concept relates to The Matrix. Again, a movie that Anisa has never watched. Second, this idea is not original in the slightest. The fact that Anisa is trying to pass this off as something she's come up with or even a term she's coined is kind of insane. If you're feeling out of the loop right now, what Anisa is trying to explain is more commonly referred to as the Archie Bunker effect. Essentially, back in the 70s, All in the Family creator Norman Lear created the character Archie Bunker to critique the backwards and bigoted ideas held by some Americans at the time. Archie was intended as a rhetorical punching bag for his enlightened liberal daughter and her long-haired husband Mike. However, something happened that Norman never could have predicted. American audiences fell in love with Archie. Carol O'Connor's performance was so endearing that many found Archie to be relatable, and ultimately Norman Lear's message fell on deaf ears. Now, while this is an interesting phenomenon to observe, I really hate online conversation around this topic as it's become very popular with the media literacy crowd. It just reeks of snarky, pseudo-intellectual bullshit that people keep in their back pocket to farm Reddit karma. It's like when people say, "You shouldn't idolize Walter White. He put his ego before his family. When you think about it, Skylar's the real hero." I don't know when we move from death of the author to having to ask writers what characters we're allowed to relate to or what themes we should be observing, but it's kind of lame. Also, in the case of American Psycho, I'm pretty sure all the recent literally me memes are meant somewhat ironically. Like, I doubt a significant portion of the population watched this movie and thought, I relate. I also want to kill homeless people on the weekends. Okay, after about 40 minutes of meandering, iDUBBBZ and Anisa's producer, Dane, finally shows up, meaning Vampire's Kiss discussion is imminent. By the way, I have no clue why they call this guy their producer. He doesn't do the audio, he doesn't switch the camera, he doesn't even pull up any clips. He basically just acts as Ian and Anisa's third chair, who sits in a dirty room and films on a Logitech camera I'm sure was discontinued back in 2014. To understand the dynamics of this very awkward trio, please review the following clip.
Your skin
I had to
looks
set that because I was
awesome.
up. My what?
Your skin looks awesome.
Really? I think it
Yeah.
looks fucking. I woke up and I looked in the mirror and I was like, fuck.
I cannot imagine how this could be anything other than a pointed insult. I mean, it looks like this guy exfoliates with a cheese grater. They could have meaningfully cut down on the makeup budget if he was around to play Freddy Krueger back in the 80s. This is probably the worst compliment you could give this man. And finally, after an hour of the dumbest people you've ever met, having the most boring conversation you've ever heard, Ian and Anisa get to this podcast's supposed central topic, that being Vampire's Kiss. Keep in mind, this podcast was released less than a month ago, and pointing out how wacky Nicolas Cage movies are probably peaked in popularity when I was in high school. But don't worry, these two are bringing it back, folks.
The Vampire's Kiss.
Oh, the vampires kiss.
It was longer than I expected it to be. I think ideal world, I think the build-up could have been a little bit quicker. You know, maybe shave off 20 minutes of the film and I would have been like happy as a clam.
It's only in an hour and 10 minutes, so.
Yeah, I thought it was
Oh.
a great length.
Shit. Okay, no, I take it back then.
Or
Yeah.
sorry, not an hour and 10 minutes. My bad. I'm stupid. I thought an hour was 100 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And right off the bat, we got nothing. Ian is so non-committal in his opinion and clueless about basic details like runtime that he could be led to change his assessment instantly. If Dane would have told him this movie was 40 minutes, I'm sure Ian would have gaslit himself into believing this movie is a 10 out of 10. It's that easy, folks. And by the way, it is very difficult trying to find noteworthy clips in this podcast. It is very boring. And Ian agrees with me. He's on his phone basically the whole podcast.
I'm going to guess it's steel, lumber, oil, and canola. That's going to be my guess. Top 4.
I'm gonna, well,
Oh, and fresh water.
Maple syrup.
Well,
That
I don't-
might sound like a joke.
I don't think it's gonna
I
include
bet maple
that.
syrup.
For that reason, I'm going to be skipping around a lot in this section. There's just not a lot of diamond in this rough, so please bear with me.
The other thing that I looked up just to like make sure that I was interpreting it properly is vampires have a long history in literature with sexuality. It's like a very common theme. And it's usually about somebody embracing a part of them that is considered not heteronormative, or sometimes it's like a depravity, or just something that is like
a repressed part of it.
a repressed part of your sexuality, basically. And so the way that I interpreted the film in general was that he was struggling. He has this idea of perfection, this idea of masculinity, this way that he wants to like live his life, and him realizing that he has something in him, deep in him, that is not lining up with the heteronormative expectations of like a man, slowly made him like violent and lose it, basically.
1. Learning that vampires are commonly associated with sexual themes at the age of 31 is wild. 2. Where are we going with this? Is Anisa trying to suggest that Nicolas Cage's character tried to rape the secretary because he's secretly gay? I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say that's a little problematic. I love this movie, and honestly, I was not picking up what Anisa was putting down. Granted, it has been years since I've seen it, but I do not recall any subtext that would support this hypothesis. I just think she thinks the word heteronormative sounds really smart. Maybe she just learned it recently and is trying to shoehorn it into any conversation she can.
And that's how I mean, I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's definitely how I interpreted it, because he was so angry, and it was particularly at women.
I'm pretty sure that's not what they were going for. Call me crazy. I know that queer representation was a little rough in the 80s, but I severely doubt that secretly gay lady rapist was what they had in mind when they filmed this movie. And by the way, believe it or not, you don't have to be gay to be angry at women. Trust me, happens to the best of us.
It's really hard to tell what they were going for, but
Yeah.
it is funny how at the very least it falls into place when it comes to like how you can interpret it, because I interpreted it very similarly, but I would say that the best way to sum it up is it's about a very wait, where did he go?
Thank you, Dane. Very constructive.
It kind of touches on like the thing that nobody likes to talk about, which is like there are a lot of fetishes, like pretty much every fetish or kink or whatever is inherently based on something that is scary to them. Like that's what's exciting, is that it's kind of frightening.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny to imagine that to a misogynist, the most frightening thing that you can imagine is a woman with power.
Is that true, Dane? You'll have to excuse me. I didn't know this guy was the kink master. And I hate to question our guy's logic, but things aren't matching up. Are you telling me people with foot fetishes are afraid of feet? Are you telling me people with piss kinks are afraid of the toilet? I don't know. After about 10 seconds of thinking about it, this is starting to sound a lot less like the thing that nobody likes to talk about and more like something you pulled out of your ass right now. Sorry, Dane, I'm seriously questioning your kink credentials. Next up, the crew discussed the scene where Nicolas Cage fires a blank into his mouth, and Anisa, very confidently, spreads incorrect information about the death of Brandon Lee.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was from The Crow or whatever, if that was a situation where it was blanks and it still killed him, or if that was accidentally loaded with a bullet. But yeah, that may not be a good example,
blank.
but
I think it really speaks to Anisa's character that she goes from saying, I think so, to very confidently stating misinformation in basically the same breath. If you're somehow out of the loop on this very famous death that occurred over 30 years ago, Brandon Lee died on the set of The Crow when a prop master failed to properly inspect the barrel of a .44 Magnum that was supposed to be loaded with blanks. Long story short, the tip of a bullet had become lodged in the barrel earlier during the shoot and expelled when actor Michael Massey fired it at Brandon Lee, killing him on the spot. I was under the assumption that this was fairly common knowledge for people amongst Ian and Anisa's age bracket, but apparently not. Regardless, Ian's been on his phone the entire podcast and could have easily Googled this real-world event.
Do you know if it's like, if this has always been a thing, is like categorizing movies in such a way? Like if I go on IMDb right now and it says like fucking Vampire's Kiss parentheses comedy, if that means that it was advertised as such when it came out back then?
that's a good question. I don't know, actually.
Yes, Ian, the concept of genres did exist in the late 80s. Believe it or not, they had this system pretty well figured out well before 1988. And again, this is really something I need to highlight. These people aren't young. Ian and Anisa are in their 30s. They're not Zoomers. And I don't even know how old Dane is. This man has the face of a stone golem smeared in raspberry jam. He could be in his late 20s. He could be in his early 40s. I don't know.
Watch that way.
Crazy how often that happens. The one infamous one that I always think about is Jennifer's Body.
Yeah,
Jennifer's
exactly.
Body.
That's a great example.
Yeah, they didn't want to sell it as a, like, they had a very specific
What was it?
intention. So Jennifer's Body is supposed to be a feminist film. It's supposed to be like for women.
Right.
But the people who made it, when they gave it to the company to promote it, the company said, "No, you need to make, like, Megan Fox is hot. This is like hot, horny hot.
Yeah, advertise it to teenage boys.
Yeah.
Advertise it to teenage boys," and it totally bombed because it did not hit the right audience.
Now, I disagree with Anisa here, but credit where credit's due. This is an interesting topic, and I really wish they would have discussed it more. There are a lot of films that have suffered from bad marketing campaigns, trailers that didn't reflect the final product, and marketing teams that failed to understand the target demographic. Personally, I don't think Jennifer's Body is one of those films. Jennifer's Body definitely has strong feminist undertones, but director Karen Kusama didn't do much to meaningfully subvert the male gaze and definitely took full advantage of Megan Fox's sex appeal. Like, if you've seen the movie, go watch the trailer and tell me if you think this is a deceptive presentation of the film. Is it sexy? Yeah, but the film has a lot of sex stuff. And honestly, choosing to highlight those elements was probably their best bet for a box office return. If Marvel movies have taught us anything, it's that teenage boys and 30-year-old men with the minds of teenage boys show up to theaters in droves. I don't know. Attempting to market exclusively to feminists who also like teen comedy horror movies probably wasn't a winning strategy back in 2009.
But I also found out that Nick Cage in this movie is 23.
Whoa!
But I think that's just Nick Cage. He
Bit
must
older.
have been, what, 26 when he did Face Off? And in that movie, he literally looks like he's in his 40s. So
This is not a massive deal, but I do have to point out this pretty big math fail on Dane's part here. He just told us that Nicolas Cage was 23 during the filming of Vampire's Kiss, and then concluded that he must have been 26 during Face Off, which it should be fairly obvious makes no sense considering Face Off came out almost a decade later in 1997 when Nicolas Cage was turning 33.
somebody got a big splinter in their foot.
Ew.
Sam stepped on a big shard of glass in the water.
Oh.
There's a lot of stories like that from the behind the scenes where they're just like, yeah, we got hurt. Whoops.
Whoops. Look at Sleepy
Um,
Merlin.
All right, well, it sounds like you guys liked the movie.
And after about 30 minutes of film discussion on this hour-and-a-half podcast, they are out of steam, folks, which is a bummer because I really wish there was more to discuss. Fortunately, Anisa made an important announcement about future film discussion on the She Ruined My Career podcast.
So, everybody, the next assignment is Sunshine. We're all watching it, and we'll discuss it next week.
I don't know about you guys, but I was very excited to hear this announcement. Unfortunately, as of recording this video, this podcast is about a week late. I don't know if they still intend to release the Sunshine discussion. I don't know if it's put on the back burner in light of recent controversy, but if and when it comes out, you can expect me to cover it on this channel.